You want to learn how to play Arcane Mage in Season 2 of Midnight? In this guide, I will cover all the changes coming from Season 1 and how to play Arcane Mage, and furthermore, why this might be your new favorite spec to play in a game. Before we go into a deep dive how the spec works, what changed, and what you should memorize when playing it, I want to mention that all the basics like what are arcane charges, what is clear casting, what do the different spells do, I covered in my other arcane guide. I will link it below because you can still go back, watch that guide if you want to learn anything about the basics or about defensives. I covered everything in my first guide. In this guide, I will mainly go into the changes coming from Season 1 and furthermore show you the new talents, show you what the new Apex talent Prismatic Bolt does, and how to play it in real time. As you might have been aware, the biggest problem with Arcane Mage in Season 1 was defensives. We died basically every single dungeon, we struggled to survive even simple mechanics. So in Season 2, we got this new talent, Refractive Images. 10% of the damage you would take is instead dealt to you over 8 seconds. If you cast Mirror Image, which you can even reduce the cooldown with this talent, then this effect increases to 30%. So you basically have your personal stagger. If you've ever played Monk, Brewmaster Monk, you will know what stagger is. And you basically take, instead of a big hit, you take it over time. Another big change is having 2 Prismatic Barriers. Prismatic Barrier is amazing because on top of giving you an absorb, it reduces your magic damage taken by 20% for 1 minute. But not only that we get a second charge, this season we probably will play a Sun Fury. Currently, which is the 18th of August, Sun Fury is the play for Arcane and Keys, and Sun Fury comes with the talent Merely Setback. Merely Setback makes it so that a 20% magic damage reduction persists even after a barrier gets removed for an additional 8 seconds. The second big change is we're not longer playing Spellsling or Orb build, we are finally playing Missiles again. I know all of you guys have been asking me in Season 1, can we finally get Missiles back? I want to play Missiles. Orb build is not fun. Going is not fun. Casting Arcane Pulse is not fun. Blizzard heard all of you, and we finally are casting Missiles again. This comes together with the new Apex talent Prismatic Bolt. And what I want to tell you about this new Apex talent is that your whole spec currently revolves about getting as many Prismatic Bolts as you can get. Arcane Barrage has a 2% chance per stack of Arcane Salvo consumed to transform or replace your next Arcane Blast with Prismatic Bolt. Prismatic Bolt does a lot of damage to your primary target and also does reduced damage to targets around it. Alright, that is like the biggest changes. Right here you can see the standard talent set that we play. There's not really much room for change, unfortunately. We still have useless talents on the mage tree side like Hypothermia, which is never gonna happen unless you play Frost. Furthermore, we also still play Orb, even though we basically never use it. Why is that? The other talents don't really give you any value. And because we still play Orb Barrage, it still does fairly good damage, but you're never really actively casting Orb, except for a few situations. Before we go into the rotation, let's talk stats and trinkets that you might want to get your hands on in the first few weeks of the patch. For Arcane specifically this season, we are talking about Haste as one of your most important stats, and after that we have Verse and Crit. Both of these stats are about equal. Last but not least, we have Mastery. The most important thing though for you to know is again, sim yourself, because Arcane kinda likes all stats. So depending on your gear, if you don't have the BIS gear from the BIS list, it might be that one or the other stat is better for you. So you should never follow a straight stat priority. Always make sure to sim yourself. In my first video in Season 1, I added a link. So if you need to check that out again, feel free to go back to my first guide. Until the nerfs recently, Gabbo's Bottomless Bag, which comes from the Lost Explorers from the raid, was one of our best trinkets. And so far we always considered bonus rolling here as the best option. Unfortunately, I got nerfed. I would wait a bit with bonus rolling to see what other nerfs and patches Blizzard does, in case they have anything else up their sleeves. One trinket though that probably will be irreplaceable is the Frayed Runner's Flask. This comes from the Dungeon Murder row, so basically from Mythic Plus. This trinket will be the best for Arcane. Why is that? Because we have a 1 minute 30 seconds cooldown on this flask. And as we all know, Surge is also 1 minute 30 cooldown. So any trinket that has longer cooldown than this always desyncs, and that usually makes it always the best if there's a trinket that matches your cooldown time. Other than that, obviously weapons with cantrip effects usually are the best choice. So for weapons from the last boss, Ulatek, Yantra Zeph is a really good pick for you. But here again, make sure to not bonus roll this early. You have a big chance of getting Font of Venomous Rage, and this is really not the trinket you want to get with your first bonus roll. Last but not least, crafted items. depending if you mythic rate or not, you want to craft different items. I would really highly recommend do not craft something in the first week. Make sure that you wait what the Race to World First raiders do. But usually, if you don't rate mythic, if it's for example only your alt, or you're playing it more casually, crafting a two-hand weapon can be a really good choice. I personally will wait with my crafting until I really need to. Usually in the first weeks, most guilds clear normal, heroic, and maybe the first two bosses of mythic. Especially for those bosses, you don't really need the best items yet. So then using your crests, if you don't even know what items you might get from your vault or from the raid, is usually not a good choice to do. When you reach your 4th set this season, whenever you cast missiles, you get a buff that's called Cumulative Power. This will increase the damage of your next blast or prismatic bolt up to a maximum of 40%. Unfortunately, this tier set already got nerfed by the time of recording, so now the maximum that it can get up to is 24%. The other changes that affect Arcane you will see right now, I will show you on screen. So while our tier set got nerfed, we at least got a flat damage increase. Now let's go into the rotation. Before I go into the rotation, I want to say two things. First of all, I hope you like gambling, because there's a lot of variance in the spec. And especially getting chances at Prismatic Bolt doesn't mean it's ever going to be guaranteed that you get one. So sometimes you can go into the poll and you get 4, 5, 6 Prismatic Bolts, you get all the clear casting that you need. And sometimes you have no clear casting, you have no Prismatic Bolts, you're just getting unlucky left and right, and that obviously also has an impact on your DPS. The second thing I want to mention is, with this rotation that I'm going to show you, or I personally prefer to say action priority list, it is important for you to know I didn't create this. I didn't come up with this. This came up with all the help of the Mage Discord, big involvement from Porom, big involvement from all the guys working on the APL, and I want to give them the credit they deserve, because without them we would not have this priority list. So now in the background you can see the priority list. And for you, this might be really confusing, because there is no set rotation. There is no push button 1, then 2, then 3, then go back to push button 1. That's not how Arcane Mage works this season. You have a lot of conditions that you have to have in your head to make sure that your rotation is optimal. So the first thing before all of the conditions, whenever you want a barrage, you want to have 4 arcane charges. This usually you don't really have to look too deep into, because whenever you hit one of the barrage conditions, you can see here, in 99% of the cases you will have 4 charges anyways. But just in case you don't have them, then you have to make sure, or you should at least make sure, that you get to 4 charges before you send the barrage. If you want to know how to build arcane charges, what arcane charges are, go back to my first guide. I linked it in the description below. So then we go into the priority list. Here you can see your highest priority always is arcane missiles if you have clear casting, and if you have 12 or less salvo. So 12 is like the magic number that you should engrave in your head. Whenever you hit 12 salvo, usually that's when you want to start thinking about barraging. The second highest priority is spam the barrage button if you are in Arcane Soul. I've seen this question a lot in the Mage Discord, but what if I get a Prismatic Bolt proc? Should I cast it in Arcane Soul? Should I cast clear casting missiles in Arcane Soul, or even overpowered missiles? No, you don't do that. All you want to do in Arcane Soul is spam that barrage button as hard as you can, but only while it's active. So make sure that you don't spam barrage after it ends. The next condition, so we don't have Soul active and we also don't have clear casting in less than 12 procs, is cast Prismatic Bolt. Here you can also see the symbol for the new tier set. Basically a good thing is to make sure that you always have 8 stacks. But whenever you cast one clear casting wave of missiles, you should always have 8 stacks anyway. And here comes why 12 is an important number. Whenever you hit the number 12, if you have clear casting and you hit that number 12, so you have 12 or more salvo, that's when you then want to start barraging. So here again, this is how you read the priority list, right? You check which situation are you in. Okay, I'm not below 11, so I don't have 2 clear cast missiles, even though I have clear casting. I'm not in Soul. I also don't have Prismatic Bolt. So the next thing that would be then in case is, okay, I'm above 12 and I have clear casting, let me barrage. Why is that? Well, once you barrage, you get back to step 1, you are below 12 salvo and you have clear casting ready, so you want to cast missiles again. Next up, let's say you are giga unlucky, you get 0 clear casting. The first condition says only barrage if you have a clear casting, right? So you don't have one. Well, what do? You will instead, for example, cast Arcane Blast or do other things. Then you suddenly get to 25. 25 is the maximum salvo that you can have. Everything you do after that doesn't add to it, but basically you just waste salvo. So this is like the hard cap that if you ever reach 25, you want to barrage no matter what. So then, if we're not in single target, but we are in AoE, so I'm mainly talking about Mythic Plus here, you are above 12 salvo, so let's say 12 to 25 in that range, right? And you don't have clear casting, usually you want to go up to 25, right? If you have 5 targets and your AWP is ready, you don't want to do that. Instead, you want to then use a barrage. If you ever have 0 arcane charges, this for example could mainly happen after that condition that I just said. So you barrage between 12 and 25, you don't proc the orb by chance, and so you suddenly are left with 0 arcane charges, 0 salvo. What would you do here? You would then first of all cast a orb. Last but not least, if none of these conditions hit, that's when you start blasting. So it's basically your last resort. And as you can see, and this is really, really important, orb is not an integral part of our rotation anymore. You don't want to cast orb at all, only in a single situation. Now, the last part of the video, I will show you a short sequence of how a opener and basically the gameplay could look like. For me, important here for you to know is the only thing that's fixed is your opener. Your opener is always gonna be Surge, Missiles, Barrage, Touch. And after that, Touch gives you another missiles, so this is usually why you always want to cast at least one more missile after Touch. And from there on out, you have to follow the priority list. With that, let's get into sample rotation. You can just watch my ability tracker above details, and I hope you enjoyed this guide so far. One thing I want to mention here, you saw at the end of my rotation I was at 25 salvo. Obviously you would waste salvo by casting missiles after Surge here if you go into your Surge window. So instead you would just skip the missiles after Surge and you will go Surge into Barrage into Touch. I know this might seem intimidating, and I know that a lot of you don't like just having a priority list. You want to know which button to press exactly when, but this is how Arcane works this season so far, unless they change something else. So use the sample iteration and take a screenshot of the priority list, analyze yourself, why did I cast which spell, and then also make sure that you understand why did I cast it and try it yourself. Try it over and over, try it at the dummies, you will get the hang of it, and I'm sure that you are going to be the next Arcane Mage that I'm going to see on the Arcane Mage ladder NM+. Thanks for watching guys, and see you in my next guide.